What if the very foundation of justice, the sanctity of the jury room, was compromised from within? Not by a violent criminal, not by a corrupt politician, but by the person entrusted with protecting the process itself. For years, the name Alex Murdaugh became synonymous with betrayal, greed, and murder. A once powerful attorney from a legal dynasty that dominated South Carolina's Low Country for generations. A man accused of stealing millions from vulnerable clients. A man convicted of murdering his wife, Maggie, and his youngest son, Paul. In March of 2023, a jury delivered what many believed was the final chapter. Guilty. 2 life sentences. Case closed, or so it seemed. But justice is not measured solely by the verdict. It is measured by the process. And in May of 2026, that process came under devastating scrutiny. The South Carolina Supreme Court issued a unanimous ruling that sent shockwaves through the legal world. The conviction was overturned, the verdict was erased, and the court declared that the jury itself had been improperly influenced. Suddenly, a case that appeared settled became uncertain once again. The murders remained, the evidence remained, the victims remained, but the conviction did not. Today, we examine the extraordinary events that led one of America's most notorious murder convictions to collapse. This is not simply a story about guilt or innocence. It is a story about power, about the procedure, and about what happens when the guardians of justice become part of the controversy themselves. Long before the murders, the Murdaugh name carried enormous influence throughout South Carolina. For nearly a century, members of the family occupied powerful positions within the local legal system. Their reach extended across courts, law enforcement agencies, and political institutions. To many residents, the Murdaugh name represented authority itself. But by 2021, that image was beginning to crack. Behind the scenes, allegations of financial misconduct were mounting. Clients claimed money had disappeared. Settlements allegedly vanished. Questions emerged regarding years of financial deception. Then, on the night of June 7, 2021, everything changed. At the family's Moselle hunting property, Maggie Murdaugh and her son, Paul, were found shot to death. The murders instantly became national news. Public fascination intensified because the killings appeared connected to a family already surrounded by controversy. Investigators soon focused on Alex Murdaugh himself. What followed was one of the most closely watched murder trials in modern American history. For weeks, prosecutors presented a detailed narrative. They argued that Alex Murdaugh killed his wife and son as his financial world collapsed around him. The defense maintained that investigators had reached the wrong conclusion. The nation watched every development, every witness, every cross-examination, every revelation. And when the jury finally returned its verdict, many believed justice had been served. But a hidden controversy was already beginning to emerge, one that had nothing to do with ballistics, nothing to do with forensic evidence, and everything to do with the jury. The American justice system rests upon a simple idea. 12 ordinary citizens are entrusted with extraordinary responsibility. Jurors are expected to evaluate evidence objectively, to resist outside pressure, to deliberate independently. Their decision must belong to them alone. That principle is so fundamental that courts treat any outside influence as a serious threat. Because once impartiality disappears, public trust disappears with it. This is where the controversy began. Following Murdaugh's conviction, allegations surfaced involving Colleton County Clerk of Court Rebecca "Becky" Hill. The accusations were startling. Witnesses and jurors alleged that Hill made comments about Murdaugh during the trial. Some claimed she encouraged jurors to pay close attention to his testimony and body language. Others alleged she communicated views that suggested guilt before deliberations had concluded. At first glance, these allegations might seem minor. A few comments, a few conversations, nothing more. But in legal terms, the implications were enormous. Jurors are expected to hear only the evidence presented in court, not opinions, not guidance, not suggestions from court officials. The clerk's role is administrative, neutral, invisible. The moment that neutrality is compromised, questions emerge about whether the verdict truly belonged to the jury, or whether someone else helped shape it. And as investigators examine the allegations, those questions became impossible to ignore. As scrutiny intensified, the allegations against Hill expanded. According to court findings, multiple jurors reported hearing comments that appeared to undermine Murdaugh's credibility. Some alleged she warned jurors not to be fooled by the defendant. Others recalled comments about his behavior while testifying. The allegations painted a troubling picture, not a dramatic conspiracy, not secret meetings in dark hallways. Something potentially more dangerous: subtle influence, repeated influence. Influence coming from a figure jurors naturally viewed as an authority within the courthouse. The Supreme Court would later describe these actions as improper external influence on the jury. Meanwhile, separate controversies surrounded Hill's conduct. Investigations examined allegations involving book promotion, misuse of position, and other misconduct connected to the trial's aftermath. Reports later indicated she pleaded guilty to misconduct-related charges and resigned from office. But the central issue before the court was not publicity, not personal gain, not public perception. The question was whether her conduct contaminated the jury process itself. If the answer is yes, the consequences would be extraordinary, because even overwhelming evidence cannot cure a fundamentally unfair trial. And that principle would soon be tested at the highest level in South Carolina. In May of 2026, the South Carolina Supreme Court delivered its answer. The ruling was unanimous, 5 justices, 1 conclusion. The court found that Murdaugh had been denied his right to a fair trial by an impartial jury. The language was striking. The justices concluded that Hill had placed her fingers on the scales of justice. Those words carried enormous weight. The court was not evaluating whether Murdaugh was innocent. The court was not declaring the evidence insufficient. The court was evaluating the integrity of the process itself. And according to the justices, that process had failed. As a result, the convictions were overturned. The life sentences for murder were vacated, and a new trial was ordered. The ruling shocked many observers. For years, legal experts have emphasized how difficult it is to overturn a major conviction. Appeals fail routinely. New trials are rare. But the court concluded that the interference had crossed a constitutional line. The system had reached a painful conclusion. The integrity of the process mattered more than preserving the verdict. Even in one of the most infamous murder cases in recent memory. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Many people believe Alex Murdaugh is guilty. Many legal observers still point to the evidence presented at trial. Many victims' advocates fear the reversal may reopen wounds that never fully healed. But constitutional rights are not reserved for popular defendants. They exist specifically for moments like this. Moments when public outrage collides with procedural fairness. The Supreme Court's message was clear. Justice cannot depend solely on outcomes. It must also depend on the process. A conviction obtained through improper influence creates a dangerous precedent, because if the rules can be ignored for one defendant, they can eventually be ignored for anyone. That principle lies at the heart of the American legal system. The court's decision was not an endorsement of Murdaugh. It was a defense of the jury system itself. And that distinction may be the most important lesson of this entire case. The legal battle is far from over. Prosecutors have already announced their intention to retry Alex Murdaugh for the murders of Maggie and Paul. Any future trial will face enormous challenges: selecting an impartial jury, managing years of publicity, separating evidence that may be considered unfairly prejudicial, reconstructing one of the most scrutinized criminal cases in America. Meanwhile, Murdaugh remains behind bars. His separate state and federal financial crime convictions continue to keep him imprisoned, regardless of the overturned murder verdict. The murders remain unsolved in the eyes of the law. The questions remain unanswered, and the search for finality continues. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is that this story offers no closure. The victims are still gone. The family is still shattered. The public remains divided. And the legal system finds itself forced to revisit a case many believed was already settled. The South Carolina Supreme Court did not determine who committed the murders. It determined something else: that justice must be protected not only from criminals, but from anyone who threatens its integrity. even those sworn to uphold it. And so the case enters another chapter, another courtroom, another jury, another search for truth. No warnings, no explanations, just questions waiting for answers. Justice is not measured by the verdict alone. It is measured by the integrity of the process that delivers it. The Alex Murdaugh case reminds us that even when the questions seem answered, the shadows can return. And sometimes, the greatest mystery is whether the system itself can be trusted. What do you think? Did the Supreme Court protect the Constitution by overturning the conviction? Or did this decision delay justice for Maggie and Paul Murdaugh? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy deeply researched, true crime investigations that go beyond the headlines and uncover hidden failures, secrets, and unanswered questions behind the world's most disturbing cases, subscribe to Shadow Case Files and turn on notifications so you never miss an investigation. And sometimes, the truth is far more complicated than the verdict. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant, because every case leaves a shadow, and every mystery deserves a voice. This is Shadow Case Files.